Yeah. Meetings. This is your meeting.
Hello.
Hi, Ginger.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, Ginger. So,
I'm not hearing well.
I think we could plus and minus. Yeah, right.
Someone's breaking up.
Can you hear us now?
Oh, that's better.
Thank you.
You still there, Ginger?
I'm still here. There are planes flying overhead.
Oh, okay. It's probably the president. I'm gonna turn it down. Okay.
This is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. I'll be taking a roll call attendance tonight. We have Dave Bossy,
Present.
Scott Anderson,
Here.
Ginger Andrews.
Here.
I am Andy Lowell. For staff tonight, we have Tara Riley.
Present.
Thank you. Anticipated speaker tonight,
That's true. Did you call Jim? Or no, he's on.
Jim.
Andy, Jim Sherlin.
Jim. We also have Jim Sherlin here. Thank you. And an anticipated speaker, Samantha Gannett. Do we have anybody else?
Nope.
All right. Good evening. This open meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note this meeting is being recorded. And take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Any supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please hold until your name is called to speak on an agenda item. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Any vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. I'll call to order this meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, November 21st, 2023. Can we have an approval of tonight's agenda, please?
Motion to approve by Scott Anderson.
Dave Bossy, second.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Bossy to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Sherlin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes, draft minutes of October 31st? Are there any revisions or? Yes.
I was present at the last meeting. Scott Anderson's name was left off.
Your name was left off?
My name was left
Okay.
off.
All right,
And then some of the numbers for the counts don't add up.
all right.
Do you want to table this and have Peter rework it? with
That'll
us?
be fine. We can
We can
take
talk
this up
about
at our next meeting. Thank you. Marine Department report. Do we have any representation?
We do not.
Natural resources, please, Tara.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me. So we have been busy on everything related to solid feed moving. I've been working on a lot of the totals and what we've moved to date between the two major strandings that we've had, the Red Flag Day, and then what we've been proactively moving before those events and up until the end of today. totals around 13.3 million bay scallop seed. And we've been tracking where all of those are going in different locations of the harbor that are separated into like a grid, kind of like polygons. And so our goal right now is to at least have around 1 million seed in each of these areas. And so right now we have pretty much reached that goal in all but 3 areas. And so we're looking at continuing to move seed through NRD and possibly see if there's another option for having the fishermen help with another seed moving event. And then we have this area in Nantucket Harbor, Bass Shoal and Fifth Bend that we haven't tackled yet, that has over like around 500 per meter squared. And that's just piled in there, and it's safe. It's not going to strand, but it's way too thick and dense, and I'm worried about overwinter mortality and going into the winter in a weakened state, due to competition with food and that sort of thing. So our hopes are to organize a moving event for moving that to Madaket over to the west end. So what we're doing right now is that we've talked to the state about it, because Madaket Harbor is considered a different water body than Nantucket Harbor. They've asked us to run pathology on the scallops that we're going to be transferring to Madaket Harbor. So those went off last week, and it takes a couple of weeks to run the histology. They're looking for the parasite that has affected the Peconic Bay scallops. And they're also looking for dermo, which is a type of disease that you can get. Anticipating them probably finding the parasite, because I think it's been found in Nantucket scallops before. It's just not causing a problem or a disease. We went ahead and sent them Madaket samples too, so we can have 2 to compare. So if it's found in both harbors, perhaps the transfer will be more efficient if that's the case. So we're really just waiting on them. We haven't really thought about what to do if we can't move those scallops. We'll probably, try and thin them out in Nantucket Harbor as best we can, if we're not able to make that transfer. On the red flag day that we had, the scallopers moved around 2.15 million seed. The numbers came in initially half of that, but the scallopers I was getting the numbers kind of on a rolling basis. So I think we finally have all the totals, and it's pretty close to what it probably was. So that was 2.15. The NRD scallop boat is going out when we can, when the weather's good. We're able to move usually in between 14 to 18 totes every time we go out, which with the scallops and the size they are usually equates to around 100 to 120,000 scallops that we can move. I've been researching, putting a value on what this seed is worth. And there aren't a lot of hatcheries that sell bay scallop seed. And the ones that do aren't really interested in telling me the economics of their model. But if we look at the size seed that they are and look at what they sell oyster seed for, which is readily posted and available, I have a feeling bay scallops are valued higher than oyster seed, just because there aren't that many people doing them. But if we consider the 13 million that have been moved around so far, that value is estimated over $1 million worth of seed if we were to purchase that seed and stock it into the harbor. So it's a substantial amount, and every time that our boat is able to go out, it's worth about $10,000 worth of seed that we're moving from the shore back into deeper water. So it makes sense for our department to keep moving stuff, even if only 50% of it makes it, that scallop boat has already paid for itself, just moving 2 days worth of seed. So that's what's going on with the seed. Let's see. So in the hatchery, I can't remember the last time I was here, but I had some meetings with the Great Harbor Yacht Club at the beginning of this month. And we pitched a couple proposals to them. One of them is has been accepted. And the other one, we're waiting till December 1st. But we are gonna receive a new phytoplankton bioreactor to match the other one that they gave us last year, and this will make up the other 50% of our algae culture, just because it went so well and efficient. So we're making room for that in the hatchery. And December 6th, Griffin Harkins, he's the assistant biologist, and I are gonna go over to Barnstable County, and they're hosting a razor clam forum where the scientists that have worked out raising razor clams are gonna be there, kind of briefing us on the updates of what the status of that is. And I think it's, it sounds super interesting. I've always wanted to raise those and see what that's like. So we'll be doing that. January 10th is the Northeastern Aquaculture Conference and Expo. We've been asked to give some talks in their Bay Scallop session. So we're going to be doing 2 presentations on our research that we did this year involving the larval release and our seed management that's going on right now. The town holds a lease in Pulpus Harbor and West Pulpus, and 2 weeks ago we deployed 200 feet of sugar kelp line. That this is a pilot project that we're doing within our department, and the water was very cold, but sugar kelp likes cold water. So we have 2 lines out there right now. Nothing's visible. It's all mid-water column. Griffin went down to Green Wave and picked it up, which is down in Connecticut. And yeah, so we're going to grow it and see what happens, see what kind of nitrogen removal it can provide. And then hopefully we'll have some lessons learned from this project. And if other aquaculture growers want to get involved in it for a winter product, maybe we'll have a little bit of information on that moving forward. And so that's kind of it right now going into the holidays. I don't have a lot of other information on other departmental topics. JC is working on the November bushel counts. But for the most part, every time we go out to move seed, we go to the head of the harbor, so we know how many boats are in Nantucket Harbor. And I think, it's been as many as 18 boats, and typically I'd say around 15. We were in Mattakit earlier this week and there were only 2, but that was in close. I'm not really sure if there's anybody fishing out towards Tuckernuck or not.
Sorry, you mentioned on the Red Flag Day, 2.15 million seed moved, but you've moved, or more than 13 million have been moved. Have any of the fishermen made a tow on their way in and moved any voluntarily, or is the remainder of that mostly with NRD's boat?
Well, prior to the posting of the Red Flag Day, fishermen were moving some stuff proactively. So we have a tally of that. They would text me and let me know. And then the Red Flag Day, we had really great participation. I heard some really positive comments from the fishermen about it. But I have not heard of anyone moving anything since then, as far as being proactive about it. It seems like everyone's fishing off of Abrams and Fulling Mill right now. So we haven't really seen anyone in any of the seed areas.
And are they finding, are they all classics? Are there any issues with nubs this year?
I haven't heard anything about that. I'm hoping that the weights will come up. We opened a bushel from Little Neck and Mattakit because I thought that the weights would be a lot better. The meats look really good, but they were only like 6.3 pounds in a bushel. So I hope that, as winter goes on, maybe things will beef up a little.
Well, this seems to be the case. All the fishermen are saying 6 to 6.5.
Yeah.
Is there an abundance where we could consider raising the limit to 6 boxes?
I mean, I think options are open for whatever fishermen feel like would benefit them. Typically, if somebody would come to us with an idea or proposal, we would certainly bring it to you and entertain it. But I don't think, as a department, we're going to initiate that unless, I just don't think that we would do that right away. I think like looking at what the seed supply is for next season, definitely we'll have time, you know, for opening day to have that open at a higher limit. But I think like it's up to the fishermen to come to us to decide if they want to make that sort of change, you know, mid-season or now.
Mhm. Board members, Mr.
What
Anderson?
typically is the weight of a bushel? that you'd be
If
happy
I,
with?
anywhere like 5 to 8 pounds, I feel like 8 pounds is like good,
That's the high end.
yeah,
Seven and a half pounds is like,
yeah.
So six
What they
isn't
like
too
to
bad, but
get.
it's not as good as we'd like.
yeah,
I've heard some mixed reviews, from some of the fishermen have come from Nantucket Harbor and said that they don't think there's enough scallops to support the season to, you know, to get a full limit all the way through. But sometimes you hear that and it's not necessarily true. So I don't know, everyone's kind of fishing in the same spot, so I don't know if maybe they move a little bit, maybe they'll find some more. Certainly saw some in our surveys, but you know, I'm not out there with 8 dredges trying to tow them up, so.
anybody else?
I'm really happy to hear about the kelp. That's great.
Yeah,
And, I did a lot of reading about that.
yeah, we'll see how laborious it is.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
it
okay.
gets heavy.
And it was, yeah, anyway, great concept. Good to
Mhm.
see it.
Public comment.
Yeah, pretty much Tara went over just about everything that I wanted to go over. I guess. Our comments from the fishermen is that, yeah, you know, 5, 6, 6.5 pounds is problematic. They're used to 7 to 8. And I think, you know, some guys, they were, to Tara's point, they were doing a lot more proactive moves either before or at the very start of the season. I will say now, having spent some time with these guys in the shanties, the opening is not easy right now. It's, you know, five boxes for 6 pounds, or, you know, a box for 6 pounds when you're used to 7 or 8. It's taking longer. So, I think we are noticing that they're not as willing to fill their 5 boxes and then go do a tow in the way that we had hoped, because opening is taking so much longer than it used to. You know, they're small, they're kind of slimy. It's not ideal conditions. So, you know, on the red flag day, we actually had 36 fishermen participate across 22 boats, which we were really pleased. A couple of the guys did move from Mattakit into town, and then some folks who were not able to move their boats got on other boats, which I thought was really positive. When we were talking about, you know, what are the ways to not just penalize, but also incentivize the fleet, one of the things that we did agree on was that any apprentice who went out to help move seed, that would count as a day of fishing towards their 40 days. And I want to say we had 6 apprentices go, which when we kind of think about the future of the fleet, it's a really great way to get people who are new into this type of activity and understanding that seed moving is a part of being a scalloper. It's not just, you know, 5 boxes towards a paycheck, there's maintenance involved. So I think that was another really positive point. You know, from the NSA side, we communicated the red flag plan aggressively, numerous emails, phone calls, texts, shanty visits. We really spent a lot of time doing outreach with the fleet so that everyone was up to speed on what was going on. And then knowing that we have seed moves coming up in the future, the NSA did vote to appropriate some funds. And then our friends at Island Energy Services helped the cause. And so we have gas gift cards going out to every single individual who helped, not just to the boat, but to every single individual. And so we do have some funds set aside and some, you know, kind of positive reactions from some of our donors about how to support future moves. So Tara and I have been in contact this whole time. We're looking at maybe 2 to 3 weekend moves. I think let's get through Thanksgiving, let's get through Stroll. You know, with all of the chaos in town and that whole parking lot gets shut down for the Christmas market on Saturday of Stroll. You know, we'd like to get moving seeds sooner, but that's not realistic down there. So Might take a little bit, but we are looking at organizing a couple extra days. And then, you know, to Tara's point, waiting on approval to organize a big move. And so if we are able to move things to Mattakit, we have, you know, great enthusiasm from the fleet to send guys out into Nantucket Harbor and either put it on a big boat or truck it to Mattakit. And then we have boats in Mattakit ready to distribute. So all in all, you know, everyone's really understanding of what's going on. Everybody's willing to do more. It's always a matter of, you know, timing, wind and weather. But it's all in the works.
Thank you, Sam. You know, I've heard mixed opinions about red flag days and, understandably so, to ask people to come out and work for free. I'm hoping it doesn't become discouraging, to the point where it drives the fishermen back to land. I think there are some comparisons to be made, such as we don't ask developers or investors or contractors to repair damage they've done to medians and road shoulders and the pounding of our streets every day from 10-wheel trucks emptying barges at Steamboat Wharf. Those costs are borne by the general taxpayer. The same goes with our playing fields. We just approved 3.8 million to repair 4 soccer fields. And it's amazing to me that we can't have some type of an emergency fund for something like this. And I'm wondering if there's some way that we can get it, whether it's through an article in town meeting. I don't think it needs to be a whole lot. $50,000 held in an account for moves like this. And like I started out with, I realize there are mixed opinions about this, but in the scope of things in the new millennium, people are used to being paid for their service. And I realize it's the fishermen's, it's their fishery, but at the same time, when you compare to other things, I don't know when a board or commission has to get an article in, say, for this town meeting. Citizen articles deadline has already been met. Tara, do you know how much longer?
I'm not positive.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of a sticky issue. I mean, another thing the town spends a lot of money on is housing and in the millions. And I feel like the harbor is simply being, aside from what's invested in NRD itself, specifically for the harbor, we're not seeing the cash flow that other areas of infrastructure do get to see. And I think it needs to be brought to light that the harbor is part of our infrastructure and needs to be invested in more through tax dollars. And I'm hoping something can be come up with to in the future that helps compensate the fishermen that are willing to participate. I know there'll never be 100% participation, but maybe there'd be more incentive if there were a payment available. Simply my opinion, with a lot of thoughts happening on this over this time.
One thing that we did talk about, because that was kind of a theme, is that, you know, you're losing a day's pay to like do this type of work. And it wasn't something that we anticipated, you know, being a reoccurring thing, but if it were in the future, just for, you know, just because of the nature of the fishery and the habitat and that sort of thing, we had talked about providing those days lost in another form, whether it was a weekend or later on in the season or something like that, so that theoretically they could still make it up in the season and have that, you know, that day. But then it gets tricky if you start looking at like bad weather and stuff like that. But if it was a mandatory red flag day for this type of thing, that I think it would certainly be appropriate to talk about making that up on a Saturday.
so good. There's a lot of options,
Mhm.
I think, and it would be really good to get all of those options, spelled out and come up with, a decision on that.
Yeah, we're in new territory. I mean, we've never
Yes.
been in this situation before, so there's a lot of lessons that we're learning along the way and a lot of things that I wish we had done differently and we will next time, trying to improve the process.
I mean, and another way to, another aspect of looking at this is when we had more eelgrass, there would probably be fewer strandings, and why do we have less eelgrass? The impacts on the harbor, are coming, from a different source than the scallopers themselves, so they're kind of paying the price, for something that's, partially caused by other activities, so, let's keep that in mind in future discussions.
Andy, I mean, one of the things I think the town needs to buy in are the taxpayers, that these people are volunteering their time, and that's fabulous, but they got the wear, there's more than that, there's the wear and tear on the boat, on the equipment, the gas,
Yeah,
the insurance, and just their own so I really think we should push the town to at least put some money aside. It doesn't, a lot of money gets spent and we're not looking for a lot.
exactly. Thank you, Scott. Sam?
One of the other things that Tara and I had talked about in kind of that hindsight is 2020, understanding how much, and again, this is never a perfect science because it's underwater, you can't see it all at once, but trying to get a better handle of, okay, how much is out there, how much needs to be moved. I think what we learned with a red flag day was, 22 boats went out and 18 of them went to quays. And so there were just boats on top of each other. So it was, on the one hand, amazing to see that level of participation. But, if we had, hindsight is 2020, we could have divided the fleet better. And another thing we talked about is when we look at, okay, so how many Saturdays do we need to go do this, for example? Like, how do we quantify what is underwater and what needs to be moved? So Tara did a great job of kind of looking at what was there in September survey, looking at the math of how much we removed, and then going out with her team and surveying what's left to kind of give us a ballpark of 100 totes left out of quays and 100 totes left out of Wauwinet. Like, that's a little bit more tangible. I think some of the frustrations with something like a red flag day, there is the aspect of losing business, 100%, but there's frustration born out of confusion of, okay, we're going out, we're doing all this work, and how do we know that we did enough? How do we know if it was a success? And so I think by her being able to quantify, that really helps answer that question. And now we know going forward, okay, we think that there's about, we're setting like a 300 tote goal for this section. Let's say it happens next year. That'll never be perfect. I totally know that. But I think when you can give people a better assessment of what they're doing and how long it will take. For example, we were all out there about 12:30, the wind kicked up and it was kind of cold and miserable. But if we had known, well, there's only 20 more totes to goal, we might have all hustled and done a little bit more, but we didn't know. And again, that's totally fine, but it is maybe something useful going forward of how to make them a little bit more proactive, a little bit more planned. And I think everyone likes to know what their finish line is.
Mhm.
And that's never perfect. I know that seed strandings will still exist. But in the management side, what's our finish line? And I think that helps with kind of the frustration,
Mhm.
which again is totally valid. But I think in looking when Tara and I were talking about, well, how many more days do we need to send people out to do this? How much money does the Shellfish Association need to fundraise to compensate? Are we paying for 2 days, 3 days? What do we have? So, kudos to Tara for figuring out how to quantify my crazy request, but I do think that was really helpful. And it gives us parameters to work with.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Just so you know, the crazy request was just like to make sure that we restock the areas with a certain amount, but I do know, it's really hard because the numbers in the surveys are a snapshot of the shoreline. Doesn't reflect what's deeper that we're not surveying, and what we're seeing now with the winds is everything's moving forward. And so when you clean up an area, now, you know, when a wind event happens, it's moving forward and it looks like you weren't even there. And so it's really hard for us to kind of guess at how much there is, but I did want to provide, you know, an endpoint for everyone. Like, this is enough for stock enhancement. You guys have done a lot of work, but I have no idea, honestly, how much is still gonna come forward. So it's gonna be interesting.
All right. Well, we're glad you're there to keep track of it. Thank you, Tara. Board members,
I'd just like, I think we need to learn when Peter's here, how do we get a line item in the budget for $50,000? How do we recommend to the town that when they prepare the budget this year, that they should allocate, that this board recommends they allocate $50,000 for maintenance of the shellfish industry? I don't know the mechanism.
right, well, that's why I mentioned, you know, an article in town meeting.
Yeah, that's one way, but I'm wondering if it can't just be a line item in the budget,
Right. I
right?
don't
It may
know.
be simpler. I'll talk to Nancy Holmes and see
Yeah.
what she has to say.
When we had our meeting, Carl Sherlin, Bruce Cowan, myself and Jeff Carlson, Jeff seemed pretty positive that, it would be a difficult ask.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Doesn't mean we should avoid it totally, but that's good to
Well,
know.
that's why I just, let's,
It leaves the article, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let's,
Yeah.
you know, let's plead to the public
Right.
for it.
Right, okay,
And
good.
then their hand is forced to
Yeah.
write the check. Cause I believe certainly the money's there and it just needs to be taken
Right.
from somewhere and appropriated for
Exactly.
this.
So, I'm gonna speak a note to Peter, if it's okay, for when he reviews these minutes, is to put this as a future discussion for us to get some wording this winter, get something on paper
mhm.
as to what we might propose.
Mhm. Well, do we have time to do it?
It can't happen for this year. Because if see, a town article would be just as hard as, it'd be probably a lot harder to get the town to agree to put up an article just for.
Well,
the-
I'm
as a-
thinking we could.
We can't, we're late, we're too late
It's
now.
November 13th.
Yeah, we're too late, we missed the cutoff for everybody but the town.
But is the budget in those warrants?
No, this is the private warrants, right? So
Okay.
that's cut off for this year so it would be in next fall
The
special.
way,
meeting.
the way it's written is any board or commission is, and of course, the select board itself, it's still, the warrant is still open.
If we're able to, well, then that's the question for Nancy then. Can this board propose a warrant as a board?
Yes,
And what's the time frame if we can? Okay,
yes.
all right, well, I'll send her an email and ask her.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, okay.
Because, as far as I'm concerned, time is of the essence, and if.
Oh,
and
sure,
and
sure,
if-
yeah,
If there's
yeah, yeah.
another, 20 or 30 days to work with and if this. Board is allowed to sponsor an article, then, I'd like to move forward with that, and we can, of course, discuss it, see how Natural Resources feels about it and the Shellfish Warden, before we, completely move forward with it, but if the time is there to be able to do it, I'd like to try to.
Yeah, I'll get out to her tomorrow. Okay.
Any other discussion on Natural Resources report? And basically, we've been covering the first item in old business, seed management and red flag days. Gonna keep that team together. Anything from our members on Zoom? Moving forward in old business, harbor watershed, public information, outreach ideas. Anybody have anything new they'd like to add without repeating anything from our previous meetings? We know, we have some plans that we're going to work on January, February, I think. And we'll also communicate with the NSA on the public outreach. Green crabs,
I have several emails out to RJ. I'm waiting for some feedback back from him in regard to how successful it's been and also how everybody's interacted with Toscana and that whole process. Because I look at some of the prices on their organic compost and they must be doing something right.
Mm, mm.
If you wouldn't mind including me on those emails, that was actually a joint project between the Land Council
Okay.
and the Shellfish Association.
Oh, that's right.
We co-funded the research and we co-funded the actual project itself of trapping them.
Because I also reached out to him asking about blue crab, and I know there's been discussions about there about like, there's people out there catching them. I didn't think they were supposed to be catching them, and or their size issues and stuff. So
We
those
have-
are the same questions I've reached out for.
We've had a citizen reach out to us for some support in lobbying the state for blue crab trapping. And I guess the citizen has had some positive traction at the state level. In their consideration that Nantucket is so remote and kind of its own source away from the rest of the mainland. So we need to revisit it with him about
Okay.
what approval looks like for that and if we can help in any way.
I will copy you on anything, other correspondence.
Yeah, please do.
That's interesting because I looked up the regulations and there's no regulation on blue claw except for size. That I found it, it was strictly size because we had a question, so at a great point, we have people come out there, just like a couple other places around the island. And they harvest blue claws out there and we don't enforce, we're not a regulatory agency out there for that, so we don't care. But we talked to them. And so I looked, somebody made a comment, they're not in season, so I looked them up on our shellfish regulations, and sure enough, they are in seasons all the time, unless they're smaller than 5 inches. I believe it was 5 inches.
We'll have to look back at, I haven't given
Yeah,
a lot of
because
attention
they're beautiful.
to blue crabs. I
They're-
haven't had time to.
They're beautiful crab. I mean, I've never seen them like that, and I grew up
Yeah.
blue claw fishing, so,
Hmm.
yeah, anyway, they do a good job of controlling them, I'll tell you that, boy, they.
But for green crabs, you know, we had 12 traps throughout the harbor when we did our kind of pilot project last May.
Mhm.
We lost a couple traps, which I think is
Hmm.
part of the nature of doing business. I think as far as the ability to scale it upwards with more fishermen, it becomes a question of so one of the things, for example, when we were dropping off at Toscana, you know, you're loading them in your truck, you need to get them out there, you have to wave down the guy in the bulldozer, and it's very doable. We are cautious of scaling that type of project and opening it up to everyone until we've ironed out some of those links in the chain. We don't want tons of people showing up at Toscana at all odd hours. There was a lot of citizen interest in trapping blue crabs, and that was another concern too, is, you know, Toscana is a heavy machinery business. We didn't want to just, you know, give people carte blanche to be
Did you
driving
mean
up.
green crabs or blue
You
crabs?
went
crabs.
green crabs, okay.
So we tested it out when it was a little bit more contained, so that they know, okay, there's 2 trucks we're looking for once a week. Some of those concerns are one of the reasons we haven't scaled the project. Just anecdotally.
That makes sense. There seems to be a lot of excitement out there to want to harvest more of them. I think it's mostly based on their effects. And of course, I don't know if there's any type of balance here, Tara. You know, if blue claw crabbing is becoming so popular, is there, you know, do blue claws feed on green crab? Do they interact at all? If too many blue claw are harvested, will the green crab kind of take over? I don't know if there's any, you know, type of studying in the future on that balance. Of course, the green crab, as far as we know, didn't exist until when?
Yeah, I'm sure
For
there are
the past
some
decade.
papers that outline that relationship. that
Yeah,
I can look into. Anecdotally, I know that like in all of our surveys, we saw way more blue crabs than green crabs.
interesting, good to know. Thank you. Anything else on green crabs from the board? Harbor Action Plan Committee, should have recommendations. Anything new? I think I emailed mine out. If you all have, you know, or look it over at some point. We'll discuss it at the next meeting. If possible.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I just looking to see. Pretty sure I have them.
The next harbor committee meeting is December 4th, if that helps anyone.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sam.
We have a little holiday hiatus.
Dumpster sticker distribution. Sam, I'm sorry, we just have not gotten together on this yet. And like I mentioned at the last meeting, I'm concerned about application in cold weather and how well they stick and stay on there. I want them to last, but we'll do our best. Okay.
do we have a contact at the school for?
I haven't,
Because
no.
we need to, I don't, but it's, if we do this in spring, we can get I'm sure there are gonna be a lot of kids have to make up hours at the last
Right.
minute.
Right,
And we could get a force
right.
together, so.
As long as they're, we have to make sure they're willing to apply them,
The way, oh yeah, under
Properly,
direction, yeah,
no wrinkles and
Right.
get them on there.
but I agree, I
well.
think this metal should be warm to a lot, warmer than what we
I
have.
was thinking, if we were to start doing something, I'd bring a torch or a heat gun and
Mm,
just warm it up a bit.
This feels like too many steps.
Yeah, but anyhow, all right,
Like I said, I'm happy to help out in that whole project.
We should be able to get a
Thanks,
contact at
Scott.
the school somewhere between now
Yeah.
and we'll figure it out, okay.
new business, Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Peter's not with us tonight. Hopefully he's gonna be okay. He did have to go away for a medical reason. But he had good positive feelings, so. And Mr. Franzuto could join us tonight as well, and he has, Peter has them all together in one line item here. He'd like to talk more about Petrel Landing, which we know is still held up with legal matters. But I was thinking that, if there are things that we'd like to see there at Petrel Landing that are not on their plan, that it can't hurt to talk to the land bank at any time. To let them know how we feel. We've had discussion about this before. I don't think the plan really includes commercial access to a convenience that would attract them. It appears that the entire filled area will be blocked off, and really for the convenience of fishermen, that would need to be accessible to be able to bring a truck over to the pier. And we know they're moving the office building that's there eventually. I personally feel a small scale boat ramp could work in that area as well. But anyhow, just think about suggestions. I don't know if the plan must still be out there to be able to look at. Because this will be future discussion. The embarkation fee, as Mr. Franzuto mentioned, he wanted to discuss proposing that fee be raised. And like we discussed earlier about seed management and red flag days, this is an area where money could come from for that purpose. And possibly gaining some of those fees to go directly towards harbor projects.
Why couldn't some of those monies go towards this $50,000?
Exactly,
So where
yeah.
it goes as compared to.
As
not
far as
using it.
Mr. Franzuto said, the embarkation fees are up to about $4 million, I think he said. That's 50 cents per ticket on everybody, so in both directions, I believe. So another great topic to be discussing is the embarkation fee and tapping into some of those resources. The alternate ferry pier, he'd like to discuss more, which he mentioned, I guess there's been a plan created, or I'm not sure if it's been put to paper or not, but, it certainly makes sense. It sounds, kind of far-fetched at the beginning, but when you think about it, it does make sense, and, the location, here again, it's difficult to get used to. But as Mr. Franzuto has said, and when I first got on this board over 8 years ago, searching for a place to create just another
A boat ramp.
a boat ramp in town, the availability is slim to none, and inside of the West Jetty is actually a huge area. It's a very large area there. It's all shallow water, of course, not a bad thing if it were to be a solid fill pier created there, but anyhow, another good topic of discussion that'll be on our agenda for the next several meetings at least.
I know Dave was very concerned, as I am too. What happens if something went down in that channel? And where's an alternative source for our food and medical,
Mhm.
Well, and it
that's
could
what we're saying,
alleviate,
we need to do something.
it could alleviate barge traffic altogether
Oh, yeah.
at Steamboat Wharf, which, from what, in speaking with some of the agents that work at Steamboat Wharf, it's a hazard in their eyes, and, it's not something they actually need for income. So I've been told, and they would prefer there were another solid fill pier that were accessible for barge, transportation, so,
Tugboats are running the entire time that barge is sitting there too,
well, when,
or a good portion of it.
when a passenger ferry is in, the trucks can't leave the dock. So they start stacking up one behind the other until the boat leaves, and that also messes with their rotation of how the trucks work as it's unloading. It's an expense, of course, to the contractor to have a dump truck just sitting there when they're spaced out. Fewer are in line waiting to be filled, and so when they all have to stop and they're all sitting there loaded, waiting to leave, it disturbs the rotation of the trucks. Anything else from the board? Under new business? Public questions or comment? Any ideas, something you'd like to see on the agenda for the next meeting? Our next
Mr.
meeting.
Chairman?
Ginger, please.
Yeah, I'm wondering, how if we have a really great year, I'm wondering how the shell dumping pile at the dump, will work out. One of the things that I've noticed is that, the pile is awfully close to the road, so there's the salty scallop juice runs into the road, and you have to drive through that salty stuff with your, everybody's vehicle on Matticat Road gets to go through it. And it's also, because it attracts all the gulls that we depend on to clean off the shells, quite a few of them get run over, and the ones that don't, when they take off, or can be mess on the windshield. So I just wondered if there's an alternate spot for collecting the shells. It used to be down the big pile down at the jetties, which I always liked because it was great for bird watching. I realize I'm in the minority, but nonetheless,
Ginger, what a great point, because I have to say, when I drive to Mattocket, I slow down to about 5 miles an hour when that juice is crossing the road. And so we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting, and maybe we can do some research and talk to the DPW if it can move inland further behind the white gates that are there. That's, of course, as you know, was where we dropped off our recyclables before the materials recovery facility was created. And so there's a large paved area further in there. I see they stage and store different materials on that asphalt now, but certainly an interesting topic, because I've thought about that as well. So thanks for bringing that up, Ginger.
Welcome.
Anybody else? Our next meetings are December 5th, December 19th. If there's nothing else to discuss tonight, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson to adjourn tonight's meeting, seconded by Mr. Bossy. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Bye.
Mr. Sherlin. Maybe he stepped out. Chair votes aye. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks.
So,
I'll just email Peter with a few changes,
Fine.
because I was trying to do the counts before. I go, if it's 5, there's 6, or.
No, good. That's fine.
Okay, I'm stopping.